So today we're talking about anxiety and stress and how to overcome and put an end to anxiety and stress. And for me, for example, this is the first thing that I teach in the Head to Heart program. So at the end of week 1, people have a way, like a method, a technique to end stress and anxiety whenever it is that they want that to happen. And the problem with stress and anxiety is that today in the modern world it's become an epidemic. Right? Every single person that I come in contact with is like, oh, how's it going? They're like, oh, I'm so stressed out, so busy, I've got 1,000,001 things to do. Can't handle it, all my thoughts are spinning overdrive, and this stress and anxiety, the resulting stress and anxiety from being so caught up in the business of the mind, overthinking, overanalyzing, creates all this stress in the body, which then leads to anxiety if it's not put in check. Now, the thing with stress and anxiety is that stress-related diseases have actually become the #1 killer in the modern context. So it leads to higher blood pressure, which is leading to all the cardiovascular diseases. It's releasing the stress hormone, cortisol, into the body. People are starting to get like adrenal fatigue, so then you've got the whole chronic fatigue syndrome thing. On a mental level, serotonin isn't being produced if you're in the anxiety and stress response. Serotonin doesn't get released. Why is it that 1 in 6 people in the modern world are reliant on mental medication? Okay, that's not a normal thing for the human body to be taking in. And why is it that the divorce rate is like 50%? Why are all of the relationships starting to break down if you're in a constant state of stress and anxiety? How can you have connective relationships? How can you have meaningful relationships when you're always on the fight and flight response? You know, it's next to impossible. So with stress and anxiety being in epidemic proportions, what are people doing about it? Well, the most common way is to go and see a mental health practitioner. Yeah, and this is something that I did well over 20 years ago, you know. So what I mean by that, they'll go and see like a psychologist or they'll go see a counsellor, and then they'll try all these different ways of trying to slow the mind down. But unfortunately that sends people even more into their head and into this thing called beta brainwave pattern. Yeah, so they start using things like cognitive behavioural therapy, trying to change the thoughts with the thoughts, but that just leads to more thoughts, which leads to more stress, more anxiety, and that's what happened for me. As I started to lose my sense of self when I started to see all the psychologists and counsellors and therapists. Why? Because they're mental health practitioners. They're working on the mental realm, which is actually the root cause of stress and anxiety. That's why for the most part it doesn't work, or if it works, people go and see them for years, year after year after year. Right? Why is that? If it was effective, surely after, say, a short period of time, like a 6-week period of time, they should have a way to like come out of all of that stress and overwhelm and anxiety. Yeah. So if that path doesn't work, like then what? You know, and that's why so many people go down the meditation path, the spiritual path, right? And that works on a very similar level. A lot of it is like this mental construct, like manifestation, visualization, meditation. It's all a construct of the mind still, right? And that's why it doesn't work for most people. I have people time and time again come to me that have been on the spiritual path for 20, 30, 40 years even. I'm still feeling lost, I'm still feeling stressed, I'm still feeling anxious. Like what's the story, you know? And it's because they haven't done the work to come back into their heart, right? They're still lost at this level of the head, which is where all the stress and anxiety originates from. Yeah. But instead the feelings of peace, love, joy, connection, that all comes as a result of being in the heart. So if you're spinning around inside your head and you're feeling all of the anxiety and the stress within your body, right, that's impossible to be in when you're in your heart. Like, how can you be in peace and stress at the same time? You can't. Likewise with the head and the heart. How can you be in your head and your heart at the same time? You can't. It's like a light switch, either on or off, right? And that's why for the most part, the spiritual or the meditation path doesn't work, because it's only looking at the first dimension, which is the dimension of the mind. And unfortunately, the only thing left for a lot of people that are experiencing stress and anxiety is to take medication, all right? So the meditation doesn't work, the spiritual path doesn't work, the counsellors don't work, the psychologists don't work, the psychotherapists don't work. So what do? What's left? And for a lot of people it's medication, and that's why in today's age, 1 in 6 people, walk down the street, 1 in 6 of those people is taking some sort of medication for some sort of mental disalignment. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but the human body is not meant for that, right? And you look at the long-term impacts of medication, they're disastrous. And that was me many years ago, over 20 years ago, when I was on that search, on that path, didn't know a way forward, had no idea about the heart connection that I was going to come into, right? Started going down the mental health route, going down the spiritual path, going down the meditation path. None of it worked. Ended up seeing a psychiatrist. He put me on what was called Zoloft, right? An anti-anxiety, antidepressive medication. He said I was going to be on that for the rest of my life. Right? After 1 week, I felt completely not myself. Completely not myself. I didn't know what to do. So I was like, well, this isn't going to work. So yeah, I threw that in the bin after a week. Went back to him and was like, no, you have to be on the rest of your life. And I'm like, look, no. And that's when I came into nature, got out of all the business of my mind, all the stress, the anxiety dropped away, came into my heart, and all the feelings of peace, love, joy, connection, sense of oneness, direction, purpose, connection, meaningful relationships with people started to open up just by making that shift from my head to my heart. Yeah, and that's what I teach today. And the first technique I teach is called No Mind, right? The very first technique. Okay, when people come into the Head to Heart program, the first thing they learn is how to turn off the mind. Because there's different brainwave patterns. There's beta, which is like that. And most people think that that's normal. From the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, right, they're caught in this constant loop. And the higher you are in that constant loop of beta, the more stress you're going to feel, the more anxiety you're going to feel, the more disconnect you're going to feel. And that's just the way it is. So how do you turn that off? And that's what the first technique is about. How to not just quieten that, but then how to silence that. Yeah. And that's when people come into different brainwave patterns, the slower ones of alpha, which is our relaxed state. That's when all the serotonin starts to actually get produced. Yeah. And you can't be in alpha and be stressed at the same time. It's impossible. You can't. It's a relaxation response. And it's about living it. It's not about going into a meditation room, practicing this technique. No, it's about in a busy shopping center, how can you drop into alpha, right? But No Mind goes further than that because it also drops you down into what's called theta and delta state, yeah? And this is about an inner experience, right? People think, it happens when you're in the dream state, right? You can be in theta and delta whilst walking around a busy shopping center, whilst being stressed out, whilst in an argument with someone, if that's your reality, right? And you can be in that state when you connect with your heart space. And the reason for that is that theta and delta brainwave patterns, very, very slow, very relaxed, sense of oneness, connection with everyone, is also associated with your inner world, when you're in contact with your inner world. And that is why the heart connection works to get rid of anxiety and stress, because you're in your heart, you're in your inner world, right? And that way it anchors in this theta and delta brainwave pattern. And that's when you can just live your life from your heart without all of the stress and anxiety. And that's why it works. So for you, if you're sick of being in all of the stress, you're sick of being in all of the anxiety, and you're committed to end that, and you're willing to do something now about it, the best way to move forward is to reach out. And what I mean by that is underneath this video is a form, where you can apply for a head to heart session with me, which is designed specifically to come up with a pathway on how to go from your head to your heart. And the way to do that is to firstly pick a date and a time, fill out an application, be detailed in that application. The more detailed you are, the more we can help you, either me or one of my team members. Submit that application. And then on the next page, after you submit it, there's a detailed training video that goes through the 6 steps to go from your head to your heart. So getting out of the stress and the anxiety, into the peace, love and joy, and then start living from your heart in the world. Yeah, so that it's anchored in. So you can have those connective, meaningful relationships with people, where you can get that clarity on your life purpose again, and start moving forward with direction on the one path of your heart. And then show up for the call, show up powerfully for your head to heart session. Yeah? And the head to heart session is specifically designed to show you a pathway, to give you a pathway out of your head, right? To actually turn off all of the thoughts. Okay, it's going to give you that pathway to make that happen so that all the stress and anxiety drops away. It's also designed as a pathway to get you out of all of that anxiety, out of all of that stress, out of all of that worry, and instead come into that peace, come into that love, come into the joy within your heart. And this pathway is also designed to get you out of feeling stuck, out of all of the struggle, out of feeling lost, right? To instead come into your heart space where you can get the clarity. Your heart's always speaking to you with clarity. So then you can move forward with direction on your life purpose, like why you're here on the planet, right? And that pathway is also designed, like if you're feeling alone, isolated, disconnected from people, to instead come into your heart where you start to connect with people and connect in a very meaningful way with every single person that you want that connection with. That's what this pathway gives you. And the reason for that is so that then you can be living from your heart the majority of the time. So the majority of the time you're in that peace, you're in that clarity, you're in that connection, as opposed to all of the stress, the anxiety, the disconnect, the being stuck, struggle, lost. Yeah? And obviously on that call, if I feel that you're a fit to go further on this work, to make that actually a reality, so that that becomes your way of living life from your heart, then I'll invite you into what's called the Head to Heart program. Yeah, where it's a 6-week program where you can make that journey from your head to your heart and then start living from your heart. And if I feel that we're not a fit, that it's not going to work for you, then I'll let you know that too. But either way, it's a powerful call, because at the end of that call, you'll have clarity on that pathway that you need to take to go from your head to your heart, start living from your heart. So again, so that you're in that, all of that peace, that love, that joy, you're in that connective, meaningful relationships with people, you have the clarity, you have the direction and the forward movement on your life path. Yeah. So make sure to book your Head to Heart session today, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.